Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was 19 years old the summer it happened, working at a gas station on the edge of town, the kind of place people only stop at when they're desperate. I grew up in the Midwest, the flat, endless kind of Midwest where every road looks the same at night, and you can drive for 10 miles without seeing another set of headlights. By the time I landed the job at Maple Cross Gas and Mart, I had already bounced around a handful of under-the-table jobs, bouncer for a dive bar, helping clean up clubs after closing, even a few sketchy warehouse shifts where they paid you cash in an envelope and didn't care if you had steel-toe boots or not. But Maple Cross was my first job where I actually filled out paperwork, got a paycheck with taxes taken out, and could tell my mom I was doing something real. I remember how proud I was when I brought home my first pay stub. It wasn't much, but it felt like I had finally stepped into adulthood. The store itself was small and squat, sitting right off Highway 43. It had 3 shifts: morning, afternoon, and the overnight. The morning shift usually had 3 people, one on the register, one stocking, and one doing fuel checks and paperwork. Afternoons the same. But the overnight? That was a one-man show. One person locked inside from midnight to 6 a.m., working through the bulletproof window, selling smokes, beer, chips, and pumping gas for whoever rolled through at godforsaken hours. When I first got hired, I swore I'd never work the overnight. Too dangerous, too lonely. But a couple months in, I got promoted to supervisor, mostly because I showed up on time and didn't steal like half the other employees. That boosted my ego, I won't lie. Suddenly, I was the reliable guy, the one the manager Dennis called when shifts needed covering. And it didn't hurt that the raise made my checks feel a little heavier. Thing was, the other supervisor, a guy named Ralph, quit out of nowhere. No notice, no warning. He just walked out one Friday and never came back. Rumor was he went to work for his uncle in Kentucky fixing tractors. Overnight shifts instantly became my problem. That's where this night begins. I was supposed to work the afternoon shift, 2 to 10. Easy day, mostly handling after-work commuters grabbing beer or parents picking up milk. Around 9:30, Dennis called the store and told me Ralph wasn't coming in. No surprise there. "Evan, I need you to stay for overnight. I'll make it worth your while. Overtime, and I'll give you tomorrow off." I remember standing there behind the counter, sweaty from hauling a case of water into the cooler, and feeling a weird mix of dread and pride. Part of me didn't want to do it. Overnight was 6 hours of isolation, but another part of me thought, overtime, day off, plus I'll prove I can handle it. So I agreed. I told Maya, one of the new hires, "Hey, I'm going to crash in the office for a bit before I lock up. Wake me when you're leaving, okay?" She laughed, said, "Lucky you. I'd rather be anywhere but here after midnight," and clocked out an hour later. By midnight, it was just me. I locked the doors, killed most of the overhead lights, and switched operations to the window. The store suddenly felt different, like the shadows stretched out longer, like the hum of the coolers got louder. I brewed a pot of burnt coffee in the back and settled in. For the first hour, it was uneventful. A couple truckers grabbing cigarettes, a guy in a rusty minivan buying a 6-pack, and some teenager begging me to sell him beer. I didn't. The usual. By 12:45, the road outside looked empty. That's when the headlights appeared. A pickup barreled into the lot way too fast, skidding slightly as it pulled to a stop in front of the store. My stomach tightened. I've seen drunk drivers before, but this guy nearly clipped the curb. The truck rocked as he slammed it into reverse, then parked at pump 6. The door opened and he climbed out. He wasn't big, maybe medium height, wiry. But there was something about the way he moved, slow, deliberate, that made me tense. His jeans were stained, his shirt half untucked, and when he stepped into the glow of the pump lights, I saw his teeth when he smiled. Yellow, cracked, jagged. He walked straight to the locked front door and stared in at me. I motioned toward the side window. "Hey man, we're closed inside." Over here, no response. He just kept staring, lips curling into that jagged grin. Something about it made my skin crawl. Finally, he turned and sauntered over to the window. His pace was weirdly slow, like he wanted to drag it out, like he enjoyed watching me watch him. I forced myself to smile. "Evening. What can I get you?" He leaned close to the glass. His voice was raspy, almost playful. "I'd like a cat in a bag." I blinked. "A what?" "A cat in a bag," he repeated, eyes narrowing on my name tag. Then he tilted his head. "Huh. You're not Ralph." Something in my gut tightened. "You know Ralph?" I asked cautiously. His grin widened. "Oh yeah. Ralph used to set me up. He leave anything behind for me? An 8-ball, maybe?" My mouth went dry. "Drugs. He thought I was part of some side hustle Ralph had been running." I shook my head. "Sorry, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Ralph doesn't work here anymore." The man's grin faltered. Then he snorted. "Figures. Guess I'll just take some gas then." He shoved his debit card into the metal slide box beneath the window. I authorized the pump, handed the card back, and watched him walk to pump 6. From my angle, I couldn't see much, but I assumed he was filling up. 10 minutes passed. No beep. No sign of him returning. When I finally glanced out, my stomach dropped. He wasn't pumping gas anymore. He was standing in front of the locked doors again, soaked. His shirt clung to his chest, his hair dripping. At first I thought it was rain, but then I caught the sharp, unmistakable smell through the cracks of the window. Gasoline. He was covered in it, and he was smiling. I slammed the emergency shutoff switch, killing the pumps. My heart pounded in my ears as I backed toward the register. He raised his hand, and in it was a lighter, a silver flip-top. My thumb mashed the panic button under the counter. He flicked the lighter open, laughing, a high, manic sound that made my skin crawl. "Tell Ralph," he shouted through the glass. "Tell Ralph I want my stuff." He slammed his free hand against the door over and over, rattling the glass. The lighter sparked uselessly in his other hand. "Tell Ralph," he screamed again. "Tell him I'm not leaving without it." I froze, torn between ducking behind the counter and standing frozen in place. My chest hurt with each thud against the door. All I could think about was how thin that glass really was. Then came the sirens. The flashing lights filled the lot, red and blue washing over the pumps. 2 police cruisers skidded in first, followed by a fire truck. Officers shouted commands, guns drawn. The man, still soaked in gasoline, lit the lighter. For a fraction of a second, time slowed. Then flames erupted. His torso ignited first, a horrifying orange flash, then his hair, his arms. He staggered back, flailing, screaming, but his screams turned into manic laughter, the sound twisting in my head like something not human. Firefighters rushed him, smothering him with blankets, tackling him to the asphalt. He thrashed, spreading flames onto the concrete, before they finally doused him with foam. The smell hit me then. Burned flesh. Hair. Gasoline. I turned and vomited into the trash bin behind the counter. When I looked back, he was still moving faintly, his skin blackened, his teeth somehow still bared in a grotesque grin. They loaded him into an ambulance. A paramedic shook his head at me as the doors closed. The police took my statement inside the office while the firefighters spread kitty litter over the slick pool of gasoline by the doors. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. By the time they left, the sun was just starting to rise. The smell lingered. Burnt hair, burnt skin. It clung to the entryway, seeped into my clothes. Even after showering twice that morning, I could still smell it. A day later, Dennis called. His voice was grim. "Evan, that guy, the one from last night, he didn't make it." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. For weeks after, I dreamed of him, standing there dripping gasoline, smiling through the glass. I put in my 2 weeks' notice not long after. I couldn't handle nights alone anymore. Couldn't handle the smell. Every time I drive past Maple Cross, I swear I still see a shadow at Pump 6, standing there waiting, smiling. I never really thought much about how fragile life is until that night. A year before everything happened, I was serving in the Marine Corps. I trained like hell, pushed my body past limits I didn't even know existed, and prepared myself for combat overseas. But that deployment never came. Sometimes I felt like I had missed my chance to prove myself, like all the training was for nothing. But that training, that discipline, that ability to keep calm when things spiral out of control, that's the only reason I'm even here to tell you this story. After I left the Corps, life slowed down in a way I wasn't used to. No patrols, no drills, no yelling sergeants breathing down my neck. Just civilian life. I moved back to my hometown in Prescott, Arizona, and picked up 2 jobs to keep myself afloat. One at a warehouse during the day, and another at a small security firm at night. It was exhausting, but it kept me busy, and I needed that. This story takes place last summer, a warm night, mid-July, when the desert air cools just enough to make you roll down your windows and feel the breeze. I had just finished a late-night shift at the security job. A coworker of mine, Lisa, had asked for a ride home since her car broke down. We grabbed some greasy diner food after clocking out, laughed a little about how much we hated the job, then I dropped her off at her apartment. By then, it was close to 2 a.m. My eyes were heavy, my body screaming for sleep, but I knew I had to be up early for my warehouse shift. I told myself I'd grab an energy drink before heading home. So I turned off the highway and pulled into a small gas station I'd been to a dozen times before, Pine Hill Gas and Go. It was dead quiet, not a single other car in the lot. The neon lights above the station flickered, buzzing like a dying insect. I remember thinking it was strange how empty it felt for a Friday night. Usually you'd see at least one trucker idling or some drunk college kid stumbling in for snacks. As I pulled up to the front, something moved against the wall of the station. A figure. At first I brushed it off. Probably some guy down on his luck hanging around hoping someone would toss him a few bucks. But the way he slid along the wall, it wasn't right. His movements were too deliberate, like he was trying to stay in the shadows. I parked directly in front of the entrance, turned off my engine, and rubbed my eyes. I was too damn tired to care. When I stepped out, the figure pulled slightly away from the wall, just enough for me to catch the outline of his face under the yellow glow of the overhang lights. Hollow cheeks, messy hair. His lips parted like he was about to say something. Before he could, I cut him off. "Hey, I'll be right back, sir," I said quickly, trying not to give him a chance to corner me into a conversation. He just stared, didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me walk into the store. Inside, the place was dead. No music, no chatter, just the humming of coolers. The cashier, a bored-looking kid no older than 19, barely glanced at me. I grabbed a can of my go-to energy drink and set it on the counter. He scanned it without a word, and I paid in silence. As soon as I pushed open the glass door, I noticed something immediately. The man was gone. My stomach tightened. I scanned the lot. Empty. The shadows seemed thicker somehow. I told myself not to overthink it, that he probably just wandered off. I walked briskly back to my car, keeping my keys ready in my fist. That's when I saw him again. He stepped out from the dark corner of the station, same as before, like he'd been waiting for me. Only this time, something was different. His posture wasn't slouched. He was standing straighter, intent. I quickened my pace, trying to make it to my driver's door. The sound of footsteps suddenly echoed behind me. Fast. I spun around, heart kicking into overdrive. He was right there, not even an arm's length away, his eyes locked on mine. "Jesus," I muttered, instinctively raising my hands. "Hey, it's you again. Something I can do for you?" His voice came out raspy, like sandpaper dragged across concrete. "Got any change?" The relief hit me almost like a joke. I actually felt a small smile creep across my face. If that was all this was, then fine. I'd give him whatever I had. Yeah, sure, hold on, I said, leaning into my car to dig into the cup holder full of coins. That's when everything went wrong. The passenger side door creaked open. Before I could react, a hand gripped the back of my hair and yanked hard, slamming my head against the steering wheel. "Don't you fucking scream," he hissed in my ear. His breath was rancid, like rotting meat. I froze as the cold edge of a knife grazed across my throat. "You yell, you die. Understand?" I nodded slowly, my pulse hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. "Good," he whispered. "Now, we're going to New Mexico. Don't do anything stupid, or I'll paint these seats with your blood." For a second, the world spun. Was this real? Was I really sitting here, a blade at my throat, being forced to drive into the desert with a stranger? But then training kicked in. My CO's voice echoed in my head. The key to victory is a clear conscience and a cool head. I forced myself to steady my breathing. "Okay," I said carefully. "How do you want to do this?" "You tell me directions?" The grip on my hair loosened just a little. "Smart kid," he said. "I hate it when they beg." The knife was still pressed to my skin, but not as firmly now. I put the key in the ignition and started the car. My hands shook slightly on the wheel, but I kept my voice calm. "So, where in New Mexico?" He laughed. The sound made my stomach twist. "Just drive. I'll tell you when to turn." And so I drove. Out of the lot. Down the empty road. The world outside blurred into darkness, the only light coming from my headlights slicing through the desert night. For the first 10 minutes, he didn't say a word. Just kept that blade resting near my throat. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me like a predator studies prey. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then I noticed something. With each mile, the pressure of the knife weakened. At first, it was pressed against about 70% of my throat. After a while, maybe 50. His grip was relaxing. Maybe from overconfidence. Maybe fatigue. I needed an opening. We approached an intersection, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw headlights. A Ford Ranger barreling down the cross street. In that moment, I had a choice. Keep driving and pray I survived, or take the risk. My old drill instructor's voice thundered in my head. "Do you want to die a coward?" I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, colliding hard with the Ranger. The impact exploded around me, screeching metal, shattering glass, the horn blaring endlessly. In the chaos, I grabbed his wrist, pinning it against the steering wheel. The knife slipped from his hand. He snarled and shoved at me, then bolted out of the passenger door into the night. My head rang from the crash, vision blurry. The driver of the Ranger yanked my door open. "What the hell, man?" he shouted. "Are you drunk? Do you even have insurance?" I tried to push past him, desperate to chase the bastard down, but my legs gave out. "Don't let him get away," I screamed, my voice raw. "Don't let him get away." But it was too late. I saw him, just a dark silhouette, slipping into the shadows beyond the gas station lights. Gone. The cops came. I told them everything, every detail. The hollow cheeks, the scratchy voice, the knife. But they never found anyone matching the description. Just another faceless monster swallowed by the desert night. Since that night, I don't take chances. I carry now, pistol on my hip, knife in my pocket. Because I'll never, ever let myself be the victim like that again. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still feel the edge of that blade brushing against my throat. And I still wonder, if I hadn't slammed on the gas, if I hadn't fought back, would anyone have ever heard my story? I never thought a simple Saturday morning shift would leave me questioning the way I trusted people, but that's exactly what happened. Before I get into it, I should explain a little bit about myself and the way my life was around that time. I was 22 years old, living in a small one-bedroom apartment on the west side of Reno, Nevada. Rent wasn't cheap, and the only way I managed to keep up with it was by working long hours at this gas station we'll call Silver Pump. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills and kept me independent. And after growing up in a house where every little decision was controlled by my parents, that independence meant everything. I worked the day shift most of the time, which was both a blessing and a curse. Daytime meant fewer drunks stumbling in, fewer shady people trying to hang out by the dumpsters at night, but it also meant long, dragging hours when almost nothing happened. On Saturdays, traffic was especially slow until people started filling up before their weekend trips. My assistant manager, Caleb, usually worked mornings with me. He was in his mid-30s, balding with a short beard, and he had this way of trying to seem stricter than he really was. In reality, Caleb was a good guy, calm under pressure, fair with his employees, and someone who quietly looked out for me when certain customers got a little too comfortable leaning across the counter. I don't think he realized how much I depended on that sense of backup, but I did. That particular Saturday started like any other. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, wiped down the counters, and started counting cigarette cartons. Caleb had locked himself in the back office to balance the books from the week before. We were both used to the silence. It was one of those shifts where you could hear the hum of the coolers and the occasional crackle of the intercom more than anything else. Around 10 in the morning, the bell over the door chimed. I looked up from behind the register and saw him walk in. The man was tall, easily over 6 feet, but his build was lanky, almost awkward. He wore a long brown coat even though the weather was warm, and his dark hair fell into his face in messy waves. There was something about the way he walked, brisk but strangely jittery, that made me straighten up right away. "Morning," I greeted automatically, my customer service smile snapping into place. He didn't respond. He just walked straight past the counter and pushed into the men's bathroom without looking at me. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about that. People rushed in to use the bathroom all the time, but something about the way he moved, it was off. I tried to shake it off and went back to cleaning the card readers at the register. Not even 5 minutes later, the door opened again. The man stepped out, and I instantly noticed his face, flushed, almost embarrassed looking. He walked toward the counter with his hands half raised like someone about to confess to breaking a window. "Excuse me, miss," he said quickly, voice rushed. "I'm so sorry. I clogged the toilet." "It's bad. Really bad." I froze for a second, then forced a polite nod. "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." No, he said, shaking his head. "I can clean it up. Do you have a plunger or something? I don't want to leave you with a mess like that." The way he emphasized it, almost desperate, made my stomach tighten. Most people would apologize once and leave. He wasn't just apologizing, he was insistent. "It's fine," I told him again. "Really, it's my job. I'll handle it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Please, I feel awful. Just give me the plunger, I'll fix it." Something about his eyes, too intent, too focused on me. The register lights reflected in them, and I felt a little shiver run up my neck. I nodded stiffly. "The supply closet's between the bathrooms. I'll grab it." When I turned to walk that way, I realized he was following directly behind me. I slowed down, hoping he'd take the hint, but he didn't. The supply closet door was right between the men's and women's restrooms. Before I could even open it, he pulled open the men's bathroom door and gestured for me. "Come on," he said with this odd little grin. "We'll clean it together." My whole body tensed. Every part of me screamed not to step inside. I shook my head, taking a step back. "No, I'll handle it. Just give me a second." He tilted his head, still holding the door open. "Don't be like that. I'm trying to help. I feel bad. Just come in. It'll only take a second." The way he said it, so casual, so insistent, made my chest pound. My hand was already trembling as I pointed toward the office. "I'll get my manager. He can handle it." His smile slipped just a fraction, replaced by something sharp in his expression. He didn't like that answer. I hurried toward the office and knocked hard. Caleb cracked the door open, still holding his pen. I must have looked more scared than I realized because I whispered quickly, "Caleb, I really need you up front. Please." He studied me for half a second, then nodded and stepped out. The tall man was right behind me, shifting his weight, his expression softening again as Caleb joined us. "Problem?" Caleb asked evenly. The man jumped in. "I clogged your toilet. I was just telling her I'd fix it, but she insists she'll handle it. I don't want to leave a mess." Caleb nodded slowly. "We'll take care of it, sir. Don't worry about it." I grabbed gloves and quietly slipped into the men's room while Caleb kept him talking. My heart thudded in my chest as I peeked into the stall. My stomach dropped. There wasn't anything in the toilet but a wad of brown paper towels clearly shoved in on purpose. No accident. He'd done it deliberately. I backed out of the bathroom, trying to hide my expression. Caleb was still standing at the counter, nodding along as the man rambled apologies. When I returned, the man's eyes caught mine, and then he smiled. Not embarrassed, not apologetic. Playful, like a child who had pulled off a prank. Before I could step back, he brushed the back of his hand lightly along my arm. My breath caught in my throat. My skin crawled. I wanted to scream at him to stop touching me, but my voice wouldn't work. Eventually, after buying gas, he left. But not before turning back twice to smile at me through the glass. I told Caleb everything. His jaw tightened, and he shook his head. That wasn't about the bathroom. He wanted you in there. Later, one of our regular customers told me they saw him a few days later, being spoken to by police outside another store. Word spread that he wasn't allowed around the neighborhood anymore. It should have comforted me, but it didn't. Even now, when I think about the way he smiled at me in that bathroom doorway, I shudder. Because I know if I'd taken just one more step toward that stall, I might not be here to tell this story at all. That's why now, under my register, tucked beside the spare rolls of receipt paper, I keep a small can of pepper spray. Because at a gas station, day or night, you never really know what's about to walk through that door. I never thought working at a gas station would lead me to one of the scariest nights of my life. When people ask about my job, I usually joke that it's boring, but easy money. I've been working at a Chevron station off the interstate in Redwood, Nevada for the past 2 years. I picked up the job after dropping out of community college. I couldn't afford tuition anymore, and my parents weren't in a position to help. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until I saved enough to figure things out. But weeks turned into months, months into years, and suddenly I was just there. My shift was usually from 4 p.m. until midnight. I didn't mind the evenings. The station sat right off Highway 72, and while the afternoons were busy with commuters and truckers, the nights had a rhythm of their own. A few regulars, like an old rancher named Clyde who came in every Thursday for chewing tobacco in a six-pack, or the tired nurses coming off shift from the small county hospital down the road. Most of the time, though, it was strangers. People I'd never see again, their faces blurring together after a while. I lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment in town, about 15 minutes away. My social life was basically non-existent. My closest friend was my assistant manager, Lena, who sometimes covered mornings. She was in her 30s, a single mom, sharp-witted, and the kind of person who made you feel like you could tell her anything. She was always pushing me to do more with my life. "Sam," she'd say, "you're too smart to be stuck here counting lotto tickets and wiping down counters." She wasn't wrong, but I never knew how to answer. That Saturday night started like any other. I clocked in at 4 p.m., relieved the day shift kid, and settled into the routine. Stocking shelves, wiping down the registers, counting cigarettes. The air smelled faintly of gasoline mixed with burnt coffee. By 9:30, the rush had died down. The station was quiet except for the humming of the coolers and the occasional buzz of a moth against the glass doors. I had my earbuds in one ear, listening to a podcast, when the bell above the door jingled. A young couple walked in, arms linked, giggling as they headed for the snack aisle. I gave them a nod and leaned against the counter. It was normal, comfortable. For a little while, I forgot about how empty the night felt. But then, around 10:15, I heard it. The crunch of tires rolling across gravel, slow and heavy. I looked through the large glass windows facing the pumps. A car pulled up to pump number 3. It wasn't like the usual cars I saw. This one was an old, beat-up brown sedan, the kind of vehicle you'd expect to see abandoned in a junkyard. Rust spread across the doors like rot. The headlights flickered, buzzing weakly. The engine gave one last cough before shutting off. Inside sat a man. At first I thought he was just another traveler passing through, but the longer I looked, the stranger it felt. He didn't move. He just sat there, his hands clamped to the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like he was forcing himself to stay still. His face was illuminated faintly by the overhead lights, gaunt, maybe late 40s with an unkempt beard and greasy hair. His eyes looked wrong, sunken, wide, like he hadn't slept in days. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Not every tired man in an old car was dangerous, but my stomach tightened. Something in me was whispering, "Pay attention." I waited a minute, expecting him to get out and start pumping gas. He didn't. He didn't even open the door, just sat there. Finally, I pushed through the glass door, the night air cool and damp with a thin layer of fog rolling across the lot. "Evening," I called out, my voice trying to sound casual. "Pump's ready if you need it." His head snapped toward me so fast I flinched. His eyes locked on mine, and for a split second I thought I saw fear, real, raw fear, flash across his face. But then it hardened into something else, something flat and cold. He shook his head slowly. "Don't need it." His voice was hoarse, low. "All right," I said, hesitating. "Everything okay with your car?" He didn't answer. His gaze dropped to the wheel again, his knuckles white. I started to back away, uneasy, when something caught my eye in the back seat. A black cloth, ragged, covering something. From under the edge of it, I saw a hand. At first I told myself it had to be fake, a mannequin maybe. But it wasn't stiff. It was small, pale. The fingers curled slightly inward, the skin almost too real in the harsh fluorescent light. My chest went tight. I forced my voice steady. "Hey, is that your kid back there?" The man's head jerked up, his expression darkening. His voice came out like gravel. "Mind your business." I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my feet wouldn't move. The image of that small hand wouldn't leave my mind. I swallowed hard and nodded. "All right," just making sure I turned back toward the store, heart hammering. But instead of going inside, I slipped behind the sedan, crouching low. My mind raced. If I let him drive off, and that really was a kid back there, I might be letting something terrible happen. I reached the glass doors, pushed inside, and grabbed the phone. My hands shook as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my voice low, eyes on the sedan through the window. This is Sam. I work at the Chevron off Highway 72 in Redwood. There's a man here. His car. I think there's a kid in the back, covered up. He told me to mind my business, but something's wrong. Please send someone. The dispatcher asked for details, and I gave everything I could. The make of the car, the plate number, the man's description. Minutes stretched into forever. The sedan hadn't moved. The man was still there, gripping the wheel. Then the faint glow of headlights approached. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled into the lot, lights flashing silently. The man saw them instantly. His door flung open, and he bolted. He ran toward the patch of woods behind the station, his footsteps crunching against the gravel. "Sir, stop!" one deputy shouted, sprinting after him. The other ran to the car. I pressed against the glass, watching as the deputy yanked the cloth from the back seat. My stomach dropped. It wasn't fake. It was a little boy. Pale, unconscious, but breathing. "Got a child. Need EMS now," the deputy yelled into his radio. Relief hit me, sharp and dizzying. The boy was alive. Out near the woods, I heard shouting, a struggle. The first deputy had tackled the man to the ground. He was thrashing, snarling like a wild animal, but eventually they cuffed him and dragged him back, his face twisted with rage. He didn't say a word, just stared at me as they shoved him into the cruiser. A stare that felt like ice running down my spine. The boy was rushed to the hospital. Later, I learned he'd been reported missing 2 days earlier from a mall 3 towns over. His family had been desperate. If I hadn't noticed that hand, the thought haunted me. The next few days were a blur of police reports, interviews, and restless nights. The sheriff thanked me, said I'd probably saved that kid's life. But gratitude didn't ease the unease. I kept replaying that moment in my head, the man's eyes locking onto mine, the way he said, "Mind your business." Because sometimes, late at night, I wonder, how many people had passed him before me? How many had minded their business? And what if I hadn't? I never thought I'd still be working at a gas station by the time I hit 26. Life wasn't supposed to turn out like this. I had plans once. College, maybe trade school, something that meant I'd be doing more than counting scratch-off tickets and brewing stale coffee at 2 a.m. But plans don't mean much when you grow up in a place like Ridgeway, Kentucky, where every road feels like it leads back to the same town limits sign you passed years ago. My dad used to say I had potential. That was before the bottle got a hold of him. Before he stopped being my dad and started being just another drunk yelling at the TV. My mom left when I was 13, so it was just me and him. I guess I could have gone somewhere after high school, but I stayed. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear. And now, 4 nights a week, I work the late shift at Everett's fuel stop, a rundown station that squats at the edge of town like a forgotten relic. From the outside, the place doesn't look like much. A flickering neon sign that buzzes against the night sky, a handful of cracked pumps under humming fluorescent lights, and an empty parking lot that feels like a stage waiting for something bad to happen. Inside, it's no better. Faded yellow tiles line the floor. The air smells like burnt coffee mixed with motor oil, and the cooler hum is constant, like a reminder that time never really stops here. I try not to think too hard about the future when I'm working nights. It's easier to let the hours blur together, restocking shelves, sweeping the same dirt into the same corner, and staring out the big glass windows at the empty road. But some nights the silence feels heavier than usual, like the walls themselves are waiting for something. That night, the one I'll never forget, was late November. The rain had started around sundown, steady and cold. By midnight it was relentless, sheets of water hammering the roof and streaming down the glass like fingers trying to claw their way inside. I'd already mopped twice, though it didn't matter. Every customer who came in left puddles behind. The parking lot looked deserted, the lights above the pumps reflecting in the water like broken mirrors. By 2 a.m., I was alone. Alone with the storm, alone with the hum of the cooler, alone with the nagging thought that I'd wasted too many years here. I leaned against the counter, chin propped on my hand, staring at nothing. The cash register sat neatly counted, the shelves lined with chips no one would buy. Even the coffee pot had given up, a black crust forming at the bottom of the glass carafe. That's when I saw the headlights. At first, I thought I was imagining it. 2 glaring beams cut through the rain, slicing across the windows as a car turned into the lot. My chest tightened. It wasn't unusual for someone to stop for gas this late, but the car didn't pull up to the pumps. It rolled forward, slow, and came to a stop right in front of the door. I straightened, instinctively smoothing my shirt. My eyes followed the vehicle. Dark sedan, older model. Couldn't see the plates through the rain. The engine idled for a moment longer than normal, rumbling low before finally shutting off. Something about that unsettled me, like the driver was sitting there, deciding. The door creaked open and a man stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled low over his head. The rain plastered the fabric against his shoulders, water dripping steadily from the hem. His jeans were ripped and stained like he'd been walking through mud before the rain. I forced myself to breathe as he pushed open the station door. The chime above it rang sharp in the quiet. Cold air swept in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt. "Evening," I muttered automatically. No response. He walked past me without a glance, heading toward the back where the coolers lined the wall. His steps were strange, stiff, deliberate, like each movement cost him effort. I tried to act casual, wiping the counter with a rag that didn't need wiping, but my eyes kept darting toward him. He stood in front of the cooler doors for a long time, not opening them, just standing. Finally, he turned and started walking back. Every nerve in my body screamed that something was wrong. He reached the counter and stopped. Water dripped from his sleeve, pooling dark against the fake wood surface. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted. That's when his hand emerged from his hoodie pocket, and he set a gun down on the counter. It wasn't big, just a black revolver, worn but solid, but the sight of it turned my blood to ice. "Open the register," he said. His voice was low, steady. No stutter, no hesitation. I froze for a second, then fumbled with the keys. The drawer popped open with a shrill ding, loud enough to make me flinch. I pulled out the bills, my hands shaking, and stuffed them into a plastic bag. "Faster," he muttered. I'm going," I stammered, shoving crumpled bills toward him. My palms were slick, the money sticking to my skin. When I handed it over, he snatched the bag without looking, stuffed it into his pocket. I thought he'd leave then, but he didn't. The gun stayed pointed at me. His hood shadowed his face, but I could feel him staring. "Look, man," I said, voice cracking. "You got what you came for. Just take it and go." The silence stretched. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Finally, he tilted his head slightly, then turned. He walked to the door, slow, calm. The chime rang softly as he pushed it open. Cold air swept in, carrying the storm with it. Then he was gone. I didn't move. Not at first. My whole body was locked, my hands trembling so badly I couldn't unclench them. When I finally reached for the phone, my fingers slipped twice before I managed to dial 911. "911, what's your emergency?" My voice broke as I stammered out the story. Gun, he took the money. He just left." "Stay inside. Lock the door." "Officers are on their way," the dispatcher said. I hung up, locked the door, and stood staring at the puddle of water he'd left on the tile. The cops came 20 minutes later, lights flashing blue across the wet lot. They asked questions, dusted for prints, even replayed the grainy security tape. But I could tell from their faces they didn't expect much. "Guy like that," one officer muttered. "He's done this before." The weeks after were worse than the night itself. Every sound made me jump: the creak of the cooler, the slam of a car door outside, the ring of the chime. I started watching customers' hands, scanning for bulges in pockets, memorizing license plates. Sleep came in fits, broken by flashes of that gun, that voice. Linda told me I could take some time off, but I didn't. I couldn't. If I stayed home, I'd just sit there thinking about it. At least at the station I had something to do, even if it meant sweating every time the door opened. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the memory of how calm he'd been. How he looked at me like I was nothing. Like pulling the trigger would have been no different than flipping a light switch. That's the part that stays with me. Because he's still out there. Somewhere. Maybe tonight he's walking into another lonely station. Some poor kid behind the counter hearing that same low voice. "Open the register." And I can't stop wondering if next time he won't just walk away. I had been on the road for close to 8 hours and every part of me ached from sitting behind the wheel. My back was stiff, my eyes were heavy, and my right leg felt like it was buzzing from keeping steady pressure on the gas pedal for so long. Long drives always sounded easier than they really were. In my head it was always just me, the open road, some music, maybe a thermos of coffee to keep me company. In reality it was exhaustion, cramps, and the kind of mental fog that made the dark highway ahead feel endless. My name's Ethan Caldwell, though everyone who knows me well just calls me Cal. I was 32 when this happened, and at the time I was making the drive from Flagstaff, Arizona out to Santa Fe, New Mexico. My sister had just given birth to her first kid, and I'd promised I'd be there for the weekend to help her out. That's the kind of brother I try to be. Reliable, the one who shows up even when it's inconvenient. The thing is, I hadn't planned my timing very well. I left later than I should have, stopped more than I expected, and before I knew it, I was still 2 hours away, in the dead of night, with nothing but a nearly empty gas tank to keep me company. I glanced at the digital display on my dash. Range, 29 miles. Great, I muttered, dragging a hand down my face. My voice sounded rough, scratchy from hours of silence. The GPS on my phone had already gone dead about an hour earlier. No service, just a gray dot drifting through blank terrain. That had unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Highways usually feel like lifelines. You see signs, towns, markers that remind you you're still in civilization. But for the last 40 miles, it had been nothing but dark trees lining both sides of the road, their branches bent with the wind, occasionally flickering in and out of the headlights like figures ducking in and out of sight. I was alone out there. And that's never a comfortable thought when you're running on fumes. That's when I saw it. At first it was just a glow in the distance, faint and intermittent. A flicker that looked like it might just be my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But the closer I drove, the more I realized it was real. An old neon sign buzzing to life and cutting through the darkness. It read, "Gas and go." I almost laughed. "About damn time," I said out loud, gripping the wheel tighter. The place didn't look modern. If anything, it looked like it had been pulled out of the 1970s and forgotten here. One pump, faded paint, a convenience store attached on the side with its windows clouded over. The neon sign blinked like it was on its last legs, throwing off an eerie glow. I slowed, pulling into the cracked lot. Gravel crunched beneath my tires. My headlights swept across the front of the building, and for just a second, I thought I saw movement in one of the windows. I froze. Then I shook my head. "You're just tired, Cal." "Don't start losing it now." I parked beside the only working pump. It looked ancient, the kind that still had a mechanical meter with the little clicking numbers instead of a digital screen. I got out of the car, shivering as the night air hit me. It was colder than I expected for early fall. The smell of gasoline was already in the air, faint but sharp. I lifted the nozzle, slid it into the tank, and began filling up. The pump creaked with each pull like it hadn't been used in years. That's when I glanced toward the store again. Something about it felt wrong. The windows were dark, but there was a faint light inside, low and flickering, like a single bulb struggling to stay alive. My gut twisted. Places like this, you couldn't tell if they were abandoned or not, and the idea of walking into an abandoned store was almost worse than walking into one where some stranger might be sitting alone behind the counter. The pump clicked, startling me. I'd filled it completely without even realizing it. As I went to put the nozzle back, it slipped from my hand and clattered against the concrete. The noise echoed. Too much. Like it carried farther than it should have. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Then, movement. I caught it in the reflection of my car window, something shifting, quick, behind me near the store. I spun around. Nothing, just the dark windows staring back. But the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I told myself I was imagining things. Lack of sleep, long road. It made sense. But part of me needed to know if anyone was inside. Someone running the register, maybe even someone who could tell me where the hell I was. So I started walking toward the door. Every step crunched on gravel. My chest tightened, my pulse louder than my footsteps. The glass door was smudged with dirt, streaks that made it hard to see through. But there was definitely a light inside. I pushed the door open. A bell above it jingled, the sound sharp in the silence. The inside smelled stale, like dust, motor oil, and something faintly rotten. The shelves were mostly empty. Some still had old candy bars and bags of chips, but the packaging looked faded, as if it had been sitting there far too long. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. No answer. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows seem alive. I walked deeper inside, scanning the aisles. A cooler hummed in the back, though half the glass doors were fogged up. Then I saw the counter. It was old, wooden, with an outdated register sitting on top. Next to it, a half-empty pack of cigarettes lay open, one sticking out like it had been taken but never lit. "Anyone here?" I tried again, louder. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the door behind the counter. It was cracked open just a few inches, but the darkness behind it felt wrong. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was deeper, heavier, like looking into a void. I took one cautious step forward, my throat dry. Then I saw it. For just a split second, a figure stood in the doorway. Tall. Too tall. Thin, like stretched beyond normal proportions. Its head tilted slightly, and though I couldn't see its face clearly, I knew instinctively there was something wrong with it. My breath caught. I blinked, and it was gone. The doorway was empty again. I stumbled back a step, my heart hammering. My rational mind fought to explain it away. A trick of the light, exhaustion, my imagination filling in the blanks. But then I heard it. A sound, soft, slow, like something dragging along the floor. It came from the doorway. I turned, bolting for the exit. My footsteps echoed against the tile as I shoved the glass door open and sprinted toward my car. The dragging sound grew louder behind me. I didn't look back. I yanked the driver's side door open, dove in, and slammed it shut. My hand shook as I jammed the key into the ignition, twisting it desperately. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas. Gravel shot out from under my tires as I tore out of the lot, the neon sign shrinking in my rearview mirror. But just before it disappeared, I saw it again. The figure, standing in the doorway, watching me leave, its face hidden in shadow. I didn't stop driving until I hit Santa Fe. By then, the sun was starting to rise, the first hints of daylight painting the horizon. But even in the safety of the morning, I couldn't shake the memory. The figure hadn't chased me. It hadn't needed to. Because the way it stood there, silent, still, watching, it wasn't random. It felt like it was waiting. For me. Or maybe for the next person who pulled in. And the worst part? Sometimes, when I drive at night even now, I swear I catch glimpses of neon in the distance. A faint glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. And I wonder, if I took the wrong exit, the wrong back road, if I pushed my luck just a little too far, would I find myself back at that same gas station, waiting for it to step forward this time? I hope to God I never find out. I had never planned on ending up behind the counter of a gas station on the edge of a fading town, but life has a way of backing you into corners you didn't see coming. My name is Ryan Mercer, and in the spring of 2017, I was 27, newly broke, and carrying more weight on my shoulders than I wanted to admit. I'd moved back to Cedar Valley, the small place where I grew up, after a messy breakup in the city. My ex had taken the apartment, most of the furniture, and honestly, a good piece of me. I came back with 2 suitcases and a Honda Civic that wheezed every time I turned the ignition. Cedar Valley wasn't much. A main street with some thrift stores, a diner that always smelled of burnt bacon grease, and a string of shuttered shops that hadn't seen customers in years. Work was scarce, but I landed the graveyard shift at Pinewood Gas & Go. a squat two-pump station tucked just off Route 19. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 7 nights a week. The job was simple. Ring up coffee and cigarettes, mop the floors, keep an eye on the pumps. It was quiet most nights. Quiet in the way that could make you lose your mind if you weren't careful. The station was surrounded by thick woods, and at night the trees pressed close like they were listening. The neon sign out front hummed, flickered, and cast a sickly green glow across the cracked pavement. I told myself it was temporary, just until I saved up enough to get back on my feet. But after 6 months I was still there, settling into the routine, brewing coffee no one drank, organizing bags of chips by expiration date, and fighting the bone-deep silence that wrapped around the place after midnight. It was a Wednesday in late October, the kind of night when the air feels heavier than it should. The wind rattled the trees, and the sky was so overcast it seemed like the stars had given up on shining. I was halfway through restocking the shelves when the door chime jingled. I glanced up. Nobody. The door hadn't even swung, but the bell had gone off like it always did when someone came in. I frowned, muttering to myself. Loose wiring, maybe. But the thing was, that bell had never gone off without reason before. I tried to shake it off, bent down, and shoved a row of sodas into place. A few minutes later, I heard the crunch of gravel outside. My head snapped up, and through the glass, I saw him. A man stood by the pumps, perfectly still, facing the station. He didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't even pretend to check his car. Just stared. I swallowed hard. My pulse picked up. Eventually, he started walking toward the entrance. When the door opened, the air seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with greasy dark hair that hung in clumps, and eyes that had this sharp, piercing look that made my stomach tighten. His clothes were filthy, like he'd been living in them for weeks. Boots caked with dried mud, a faded army jacket. He stopped at the counter, his voice low, scratchy. "Can I use the bathroom?" I hesitated. Our bathroom was for employees only, a rule hammered into me by my boss, but that wasn't the real reason I didn't want him back there. Something about him pressed against my nerves like a dull blade. "Sorry," I said. "It's out of order." His eyes locked onto mine. Cold, unblinking. "Please," he said, the words stretching out in a way that felt more like demand than request. I forced a small shake of my head. "There's a public one a couple miles south, near the truck stop." For a moment, he just stared. My skin crawled. Then without a word, he turned and walked out. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Through the glass, I watched him climb into a beat-up sedan. The car looked older than me, rust creeping up its sides, headlights clouded, engine coughing when it turned over. But he didn't leave. He sat there in the dark, staring at the station. An hour passed, then another. Every time I peeked through the window, his car was still there, his silhouette barely visible behind the cracked windshield. I tried to call my boss, Mark, who lived 20 minutes away. When I explained, his voice came through groggy, annoyed. "Lock the doors. Don't let him in again. If he tries anything, call the cops. He's probably just some drifter." "Yeah," I muttered. "Probably." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't that simple. By 3 a.m., I'd worked myself into a knot. I was halfway to convincing myself I was overreacting when the station went black. The hum of the refrigerators died. The neon sign flickered out. Silence pressed in. My heart slammed. I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter, my hands shaking. The beam cut through the darkness in narrow slices. Somewhere near the back of the store, something scraped. "Hello?" My voice cracked. Nothing. The scrape came again, closer this time. I swung the light toward the noise, but the aisle was empty. My mouth was dry, my chest tight. And then, in the corner of the beam, movement. I turned. He was there, standing at the back door, face pressed to the glass, staring in. My hands fumbled with the phone. I dialed 911, every second stretching too long. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my station. He's been here for hours. The power just went out. He's at the back door staring at me. Please send someone. The dispatcher's tone shifted, calm but firm. Okay, sir, stay on the line. Officers are on their way. Do not open the door. Do you understand? Yes. My voice was barely more than a whisper. I crouched behind the counter, eyes fixed on the back door. The man didn't move. His face pale in the flashlight's glow, his expression unreadable. Minutes dragged. Then headlights swept across the lot. Red and blue lights flashed. I blinked, and just like that, he was gone. The officer, Deputy Callahan, checked the perimeter, his boots crunching against the gravel. Nobody's here, he said, shining his light across the trees. But I saw him, I insisted. He was right there. He's been watching me for hours. The deputy studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll file a report. Call again if you see him. When he left, the station felt emptier than ever. The power flickered back on as if mocking me. I didn't sleep the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face at the glass. A week later, I caught a news segment while eating dinner. A car had been found in the woods off Route 19. Inside, a man's body. The vehicle matched the sedan I'd seen. The man had been dead for weeks, maybe longer. But that couldn't be right, because I had spoken to him. I had seen his breath fog against the glass. For 3 nights after, I worked with my chest tight, every sound setting me on edge. On the 4th night, I quit, left the keys on the counter, and never went back. Even now, years later, sometimes I wake in the dark with the weight of unseen eyes pressing against me. I check the window, half expecting to see him still standing there, watching. I never thought I'd end up working the night shift at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. But life has a way of pushing you places you never expected. My name's Caleb Turner, I'm 26 years old, and I grew up in Pine Hollow, a small town in northern Oregon. It's the kind of place most people only pass through on their way to somewhere else. Dense forests, a single main street, and the kind of quiet nights where you can hear the crickets clear across the valley. When I was younger, I never pictured myself staying here. I wanted to get out, see the world, maybe move to Portland or Seattle. But then my dad got sick, and after he passed away, my mom needed help paying the bills. So I stuck around, picking up whatever jobs I could, landscaping, hauling lumber, working odd shifts at diners. Eventually, I landed a steady gig at Hollow Fuel and Mart, a rundown gas station right on the edge of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid on time, and that was more than I could say for most places. The owner, Mr. Bradley, was a gruff but decent guy in his 60s. He liked me because I showed up on time and didn't complain. I usually worked nights, which suited me fine. I wasn't much of a people person, and I liked the solitude. Most nights were uneventful. Maybe a trucker passing through, maybe a couple of high school kids buying snacks, but otherwise it was me. The buzzing lights and the hum of the coolers. There's something about the night shift at a gas station that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. The streets empty out, the stars press down from above, and you start to feel like you're the only one left awake. I used to love it. Until that one night changed everything. It was early September, the air already carrying that edge of autumn cold. The day shift guy, Marcus, handed things off to me around 9:45 p.m. "Slow night," he said, tossing me the keys. Only real action was some kids loitering in the lot, but I told him to scram. I nodded. Got it. "See you tomorrow." He grinned, adjusting his cap. "Don't let the ghosts get you." I rolled my eyes at the joke. Pine Hollow had its share of small-town ghost stories, most of them about the woods surrounding us. People said you could get lost out there and never find your way back. Personally, I never bought into any of that. The first couple hours of the shift were routine. I wiped down the counter, stocked the chip aisle, and settled in with a paperback novel I'd been trying to finish. Every so often, I'd glance up at the monitor showing the 4 camera feeds: outside lot, front entrance, back storage room, and the hallway with the restroom. By midnight, things had gotten so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights vibrating in the ceiling. I leaned back, sipping on stale coffee from the pot, and tried not to doze off. Around 1:30 a.m., I got up to stretch and make my usual rounds. I walked through the aisles, double-checking everything. Chips lined up, candy neatly stacked, drinks humming in the coolers. It gave me a strange sense of comfort, keeping order in a place that would otherwise feel forgotten. When I reached the restroom, I noticed something odd. The door was cracked open. I frowned. Marcus always shut it before leaving, and I was certain I hadn't gone in there all night. A tiny pulse of unease went through me. "Hello?" I called softly, nudging the door. The restroom was empty, clean, silent. The mirror above the sink reflected my own uneasy face back at me. "Guess I'm just losing track," I muttered. I closed the door firmly this time, making sure it latched. I tried to shake it off, went back behind the counter and returned to my book. But my focus kept slipping. I found myself glancing up at the hallway monitor, watching that restroom door. It was a little after 2:45 a.m. when it happened. I was halfway through a page when I heard a sound. A dull thud. I froze, staring at the monitor. Nothing moved. The hallway was empty. Then, without warning, the restroom door burst open. I shot up from my chair as a man stumbled out. He was tall, thin, drenched in sweat. His eyes were wild, darting around the store like he didn't recognize where he was. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. "Hey, are you all right?" I called, my voice cracking with surprise. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. He sprinted straight past the counter, barreled through the glass doors, and disappeared into the night. For a moment I couldn't move. My pulse hammered in my throat. I looked back at the monitor, my stomach twisting. The recording showed the restroom door swinging open, but before that moment, it had been empty. No one ever went inside. My mouth went dry. I forced myself toward the restroom, my legs stiff. I pushed the door open with shaking hands. Empty. No damp footprints, no belongings, no sign of anyone ever being there. By the time I grabbed the phone and called Mr. Bradley, my voice was shaking. "Someone was just here," I stammered. "They came out of the restroom. I swear to God they came out of nowhere." "Caleb, slow down," he mumbled groggily. "It's almost 3 in the morning. Lock up, go home. We'll check the footage tomorrow," I wanted to argue, but he hung up before I could, so I did as he said. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and walked to my car under the heavy silence of the night. Every step felt like I was being watched. The drive home was a blur. The next morning, I met Bradley at the station. He sat beside me at the counter as I pulled up the footage. We both leaned forward, watching. There I was, reading at the counter, the hallway empty. Then suddenly, the door opened and the man stepped out. Bradley rubbed his face. Where the hell did he come from? We watched again, slower this time. Before the door opened, the restroom was clearly empty. No one entered. No movement inside. It didn't make sense. Could be a prank, Bradley muttered. Some kid hiding in the ceiling tiles or something. I shook my head. No, I checked. There's nowhere to hide. We searched the restroom together. Checked every corner, every vent, every inch. Nothing. Bradley tried to brush it off, but I could see it unsettled him too. I kept working the night shift, but it wasn't the same. Every creak, every flicker of the lights made my stomach tighten. I'd find myself staring at the restroom door for long stretches of time, waiting for it to move. Sometimes when the air conditioning kicked on, I'd swear I heard a faint thud echoing through the hallway. And sometimes, late at night, I felt it. The same cold breeze that brushed my arms that night. I couldn't explain it. None of it made sense. But I know what I saw. That man's eyes, wild with terror, still haunt me. He wasn't just scared. He was running from something. Something that might still be here. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, convinced I'll see that restroom door swing open again. I don't work at Hollow Fuel and Mart anymore. I left the job 6 months after it happened. But every time I drive past the station, my chest tightens. The place looks ordinary to anyone else. Just another quiet gas station on the edge of town. But I know better. Because sometimes, if you stand real still in that parking lot at night, you can hear it. That same dull thud. And if you wait long enough, maybe you'll see him too. The man who was never supposed to be there. I never thought my life would slow down to the point where I'd be working the graveyard shift at a gas station. But here I am. My name's Ethan Morales, and before this job, I used to work at a small auto shop in town. It shut down last year when the owner, who was like a second father to me, suddenly passed away. I didn't have much savings, and with bills piling up, I took whatever work I could get. The only place hiring was North Point Fuel and Mart, a little gas station off Highway 73 in the outskirts of Ashford, New Mexico. The pay isn't much, but it keeps the lights on at the tiny one-bedroom apartment I rent. The thing is, it's lonely, too lonely. The gas station sits nearly 15 miles from the nearest town. At night, the only signs of life are the occasional trucker fueling up or a local passing through. The silence can either be peaceful or suffocating, depending on the night. I tell myself I'm used to it, but the truth is, some nights it gets to me. The fluorescent lights hum constantly, the security cameras buzz faintly, and the distant chirping of crickets outside fills the gaps between my thoughts. It's the kind of environment where your mind starts playing tricks on you if you're not careful. That night, the night I'll never forget, started out like any other. It was 2:07 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd just finished sweeping near the snack aisle and checked the clock above the counter. My routine was simple: keep the place clean, stock shelves when they were empty, and stay alert enough to not nod off in the chair behind the counter. I was sipping on my third cup of burnt coffee when the doorbell chimed. A man walked in, tall and wiry, with a faded brown jacket and a trucker cap pulled low. His boots left faint, muddy prints on the tiled floor. "Evening," I said automatically, forcing a polite smile. He didn't respond, just gave a faint nod and moved past me toward the back coolers. I watched him on the security monitor above the counter, his reflection bending in the convex mirror near the chips aisle. After a moment, he grabbed a soda, walked slowly to the register and placed it on the counter. "That'll be $2.19, I said. He didn't look me in the eyes. He dug into his jacket pocket, pulled out a couple of crumpled bills and slid them across the counter without a word. His hands trembled slightly. "You all right, man?" I asked, genuinely curious. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot, heavy, like he hadn't slept in days. He leaned closer and in a low, hoarse voice said, "You shouldn't be here tonight." The words froze me. My fingers paused over the register keys. "What do you mean?" I asked. But he didn't answer. He just stared for a moment longer, then turned, walked out, and disappeared into the night. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself he was probably just some tired drifter trying to mess with me. But the way he said it didn't feel like a joke. 10 minutes later, while I was wiping down the counter, the lights flickered. Not just once. They dimmed in sequence. First the far corner by the coolers, then the snack aisle, then the counter above me. Each light buzzed faintly before returning to normal. "Great," I muttered. "Another night of electrical issues." But then I heard it. A faint noise. Whispering. It was so soft at first I thought it was just my imagination. The sound of the coffee machine sputtering or the hum of the freezers. But then it grew clearer, like multiple voices overlapping, too close to ignore. I stepped out from behind the counter and listened. The sound seemed to be coming from outside. I opened the glass door. The cold desert air hit my face immediately, sharp and dry. The parking lot was empty. The pump sat still, the neon sign humming faintly above them. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. The whispering stopped. I lingered there, waiting, but nothing moved. Not the bushes by the edge of the lot, not the tall sign swaying in the breeze. Just silence. I stepped back inside and locked the door. My chest was tight, my heart thudding faster than I wanted to admit. At 2:46 a.m., the phone behind the counter rang. Now, let me explain something. Our station's landline rarely rings at night. Most of the calls come during the day, supply deliveries, regulars asking about store hours, or my manager Karen checking in. But at this hour, it was unusual. I picked up. "North Point Fuel and Mart, this is Ethan," I said. Silence. Then, the whispering again. Louder this time, pouring directly through the receiver, like someone whispering right into my ear. I froze. "Who is this?" I demanded. No response, just layers of whispers, some low, some higher, weaving together in a language I couldn't place. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking. I decided to distract myself. I stocked candy bars, straightened rows of chips, and tried to act like everything was fine. That's when I noticed something on the counter. A book. It hadn't been there minutes ago, I swear it. I'd just wiped down the counter, yet there it was, small, bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed with age. I picked it up. It smelled of dust and mildew. The cover had no title. I flipped it open and frowned. The writing wasn't in English. The letters curled in unfamiliar shapes, like symbols carved into stone. As I turned the pages, a gust of cold air brushed across the back of my neck. I looked up. The door was closed. The whispering began again, this time inside the store. I dropped the book. It landed open, the pages flaring like wings. The voices grew louder, surrounding me. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just outside anymore, it was inside my head. Words I didn't understand, yet I felt the meaning. Anger, hunger, warning. Panicked, I ran to the door. I tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. I tried the lock, my keys, even shoved my shoulder into the glass. Nothing. It was as if the door had fused with the frame. "Help!" I screamed, banging against the glass. No cars passed. No one came. The whispering intensified until I thought I'd go insane. Then, silence. I turned. The book lay open on the floor, its pages spread to a single illustration, a circle enclosing a star with strange writing wrapping around the edges. For reasons I can't explain, staring at it made me feel calm. My fear drained away, replaced by a strange stillness, almost like acceptance. I bent down, touched the page with trembling fingers and whispered, "What do you want from me?" No answer, just silence. I don't remember closing the book. I don't even remember picking up my keys. The next clear memory I have is standing outside, the door swinging open easily, as if it had never been locked. The night air filled my lungs and I ran to my car. I didn't look back. I didn't even stop to shut off the lights. I drove until the station was nothing but a glow in the rearview mirror. When I got home, I called Karen and told her I quit. I didn't give her details. I just said I couldn't do it anymore. She sounded irritated but didn't press. I never went back to North Point Fuel and Mart. A week later, I drove past the highway out of curiosity. The station looked abandoned, windows boarded up, the neon sign dark. No one ever told me why it closed. No articles, no explanations. Just gone. Sometimes late at night, I still hear the faintest sound of whispering in my apartment. It's quieter, distant, but I know it's the same. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see that symbol burned into the back of my eyelids. I don't know if the voices ever left that gas station, or if they followed me. All I know is I'll never work the graveyard shift again. I don't usually tell this story to people in person because when I do, it always sounds like I'm exaggerating, like I'm trying to turn a bad night into some kind of urban legend. But what happened that summer night in 2022-inch Riverview, Oregon, is something that still haunts me. And even though almost a year has passed, the memory is sharp enough that I can picture every detail, the smells, the sounds, the way my stomach sank when I realized how close we'd come to being taken. To give you some context, I grew up in Riverview, a town of maybe 12,000 people. It's one of those towns where you can drive from one end to the other in about 10 minutes. There's a Walmart, a couple fast food places, a strip of old businesses that never seem to stay open, and one gas station, Corner Mart 24, that stays open all night. That gas station was like a landmark for us teenagers who had nowhere else to go. It wasn't fancy. The paint was faded, one of the fluorescent lights outside flickered nonstop, and the bathroom smelled like mildew. But it was always open, and when you're 17, that's all that matters. The two people I spent most of my time with were Ryan and Josh. Ryan was the risk taker, the one who always wanted to push things further, who got bored if the night didn't feel like something out of a movie. Josh was quieter, more grounded, but he'd go along with whatever Ryan suggested because none of us wanted to be the one who said no. As for me, I guess I was somewhere in the middle. I didn't go looking for trouble, but I wasn't exactly the type to turn it down if my friends were all in. That summer, sneaking out was almost routine. My parents weren't strict, but they weren't thrilled about me staying out late either, so I usually waited until they went to bed before climbing out the back window. It gave me this weird rush, like I was pulling off something dangerous when in reality I was just meeting up with Ryan and Josh to drink cheap beer, walk around, and complain about our town. On the night this happened, it was late July. The air was sticky, the kind of heat that doesn't let up even after midnight. Ryan texted me first. "Ryan, we're bored. Meet at the tracks in 10. Me, what's the plan? Ryan, grab beers, head to the station. Walk a bit. Usual." I sighed, staring at the ceiling fan in my room as it spun lazily, pushing hot air around. I didn't feel like moving, but staying home meant listening to my parents argue through the walls. My dad had lost his job 2 months earlier, and ever since, every little thing turned into a shouting match. Sneaking out with my friends wasn't just fun, it was escape. So I shoved 2 cans of beer into my hoodie pocket, climbed out my window, and made the walk toward the train tracks where Ryan and Josh were waiting. Finally, Ryan said as I got closer, holding up a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey he must have swiped from his older brother, "We were about to start without you." Josh gave me a small nod, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. "It's hot as hell tonight." Josh gave me a small nod. "Yeah," I muttered, taking one of my beers out. "Where are we going?" Ryan grinned, the kind of grin that always made me nervous. "Corner Mart. We'll grab chips or something. Maybe hang out behind the station." I rolled my eyes. "That's what we always do." "Exactly," Ryan said. "Tradition." So we started walking. The town was dead quiet, not a single car on the streets. I remember the sound of our sneakers crunching on the gravel shoulder, the faint buzz of crickets in the distance, and the occasional bark of a dog somewhere far off. The gas station was about a 20-minute walk. Nothing exciting happened on the way, just us talking about random stuff, like how much we hated Riverview, how we couldn't wait to leave after graduation, and who we thought was hooking up with who. Normal teenage talk. When we got to the station, the fluorescent lights cast a pale, unnatural glow over the parking lot. The place looked even more run down at night, like something out of a bad movie. Ryan went straight inside, pushing open the glass door that squeaked loudly, while Josh and I followed. The clerk on duty was a guy in his 30s who looked half asleep, slouched behind the counter with his phone in his hand. He didn't even look up when we came in. Ryan went to the bathroom right away, saying something about too much whiskey. I grabbed a bag of chips, Josh grabbed a soda, and we wandered around the aisles while we waited. That's when I noticed him. There was a man near the refrigerated section, maybe late 30s or early 40s, with greasy hair that hung in his face and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in days. He was standing still, holding a bottle of water in one hand but not moving toward the counter. At first I thought nothing of it, this was a gas station at midnight. After all, but then he looked straight at me, his eyes flat and unblinking. "Why are you kids out so late?" he asked suddenly. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been smoking all his life. Josh froze beside me, awkwardly shifting. I forced a shrug. Just hanging out. You by yourself? The man asked, tilting his head slightly. No, I said quickly. My friend's in the bathroom. The man nodded slowly, like he was processing that. Then, almost too casually, he pulled out an old flip phone and started talking into it, his eyes still darting toward us every so often. Josh leaned closer and whispered, "Let's just pay and get out." When Ryan came out of the bathroom, we told him what happened. He brushed it off, laughing. He's just some weird dude. Don't freak out. But when we paid for our stuff and headed out, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man was watching us. Sure enough, as we walked past the glass door, I saw him step outside behind us, phone pressed to his ear. "Come on," I muttered, speeding up. We walked a few blocks away, then cut over to a side street and sat on the curb to drink our beers. The night felt heavier now. There weren't any streetlights, so the only light came from distant houses and the occasional passing car. We were in the middle of a dumb conversation about what we'd do if we won the lottery when headlights appeared down the road. A car slowed, then stopped. We didn't think much of it. Plenty of people drove around at night, but then the car spun around in the road and pulled up right next to us. Two men got out. I'll never forget how they looked: dirty clothes, hollow faces, like they hadn't showered in days. One of them, the taller one, kept his hand near his waistband, and that's when I saw it. The glint of a gun. "Run," Josh whispered, and we all bolted. Ryan and I dove behind an old RV parked in someone's driveway, while Josh scrambled over a fence into a backyard. My heart pounded so hard I thought my chest might burst. I peeked out just in time to see the two men walking slowly up the street, one of them scanning the area, the gun now clearly visible in his hand. They stopped near the RV, looking around like they knew we were close. For a solid minute they just stood there. I held my breath, gripping the gravel under my hands so tightly my palms hurt. Finally, they got back into their car and drove off. Ryan and I looked at each other wide-eyed. "Where's Josh?" I whispered. We couldn't find him. We checked the backyard, the side streets, nothing. My stomach churned with panic until my phone buzzed. It was a text from Josh. "Josh, I'm good. Hopped fences. Think they followed me in a diff car. Going home." Relieved but still on edge, Ryan and I decided to head back toward our neighborhood. We thought it was over, but when we turned a corner, my blood ran cold. The same car was parked at the end of the street. The two men were inside, headlights off, waiting. "Shit," Ryan muttered. We sprinted through alleyways and cut through backyards, vaulting over fences, hiding whenever we caught sight of headlights creeping down a side street. Every time we thought we'd lost them, we'd spot that same car, crawling along like a predator that wasn't in any hurry. By the time we finally made it back to my house, my legs were shaking so badly I could barely climb the window. My phone buzzed again, Josh saying he'd made it home but that another car had followed him for a while before peeling off. None of us slept that night. It's been almost a year since then, but things haven't gone back to normal. Josh still has nightmares about being chased. Ryan doesn't like to admit it, but he doesn't sneak out anymore. And me, I can't pass that gas station without thinking about the man in the bathroom. The way he asked if we were alone. The way he made that phone call right before it all started. I'll never know for sure if he was connected to those men, but deep down, I believe he was. And I believe that if we hadn't run as fast as we did, if we hadn't been lucky that night, none of us would be here now. I never thought much about late-night driving until last November. At that point in my life, I had gotten used to long, lonely stretches of highway. I was 26, working a delivery job that took me all over the state of Oregon. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover rent on my one-bedroom apartment in Salem, a few bills, and the payments on my used car. Nights were when I felt most alive. There was something calming about the hum of the road, the way the darkness seemed endless, like it could swallow up all your thoughts if you let it. But that night, well, that night made me rethink everything I thought I knew about quiet highways and gas stations that stay open 24 hours. I had been on the road for almost 4 hours, My last delivery was in a tiny logging town called Silver Ridge, and from there I had another 100 or so miles before I could cut back to Salem. My phone was low on charge, my body was running on caffeine and drive-through burgers, and my car's fuel gauge was a hair above empty. That's how I ended up pulling off at a 2-pump gas station along Larkspur Highway around 1:30 the morning. The first thing you need to know about this place is that it looked old. Not charmingly old. Not rustic, just neglected. The canopy over the pumps sagged on one side, its fluorescent lights flickering like they couldn't decide whether to stay on or not. There was a small building, the kind with a convenience store inside, and a single glass kiosk at the front. The sign above the roof read, Larkspur Fuel Stop, and I remember thinking I couldn't recall the last time I'd seen a gas station sign with peeling paint. Still, I didn't have a choice. I was running on fumes. I pulled up to the second pump and killed the engine. My eyes felt heavy. That bone-deep tiredness that creeps in when you've been awake too long. But my brain still noticed the details. The first pump was occupied by a silver BMW, looked like maybe a 2010 or 20113 series. The hood was cold though. No steam, no ticking from the engine cooling down. Whoever had parked it there had done so hours ago. I muttered to myself. Weird. Guess somebody left it? I got out, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets, the November air biting at me. As I swiped my card at the pump, I realized how quiet it was. Not just quiet like a small town, quiet like the whole world had gone to sleep. No insects, no cars on the highway, no hum from the building, just the faint hiss of my fuel going into the tank. That's when I noticed something else. The kiosk up front, no one inside. Usually, you can at least see someone behind the counter messing with their phone or pretending to work, but the stool inside was empty. I figured the attendant had stepped into the back for a second, maybe to use the bathroom. I shrugged it off and focused on watching the pump display, telling myself I'd stop right at $30. When the pump clicked off, I capped the tank and walked toward the kiosk to pay. My boots crunched on the cracked concrete, the sound too loud in the still air. I got closer and saw the inside of the store. Shelves with dusty snacks, a cooler humming faintly, a single buzzing light above the counter, but no person. I rapped on the glass with my knuckles. Hello? Anybody here? Nothing. I waited, looked around. The BMW sat there, doors locked, windows slightly fogged like maybe someone had been in it earlier. I walked around it, peered inside. No one. That's when the thought hit me, what if I had interrupted a robbery? My stomach dropped. It made sense, didn't it? The car outside, the empty kiosk, the silence. I suddenly felt like I shouldn't even be standing there. Like whoever had done it might still be in the back. I hesitated, then knocked again. Hello? Anyone working tonight? Still no answer. Against my better judgment, I tried the glass door to the store. It should have been locked, but the handle turned, and the door creaked open. Inside smelled faintly of motor oil and old coffee. The air felt stale. I stepped behind the counter, calling out, Hey, you guys okay back here? There was a hallway in back. 3 doors. One said, office, another restroom, another was unmarked. I pushed them open one by one. Empty. My throat was dry, and my pulse hammered in my ears. It was one of those moments where your body knows before your brain catches up. Something is seriously wrong here. I pulled out my phone. Battery at 8%. I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered with that professional calm. 911. What's your emergency? The dispatcher answered with that professional calm. I stammered, yeah, hi, I'm at the Larkspur fuel stop out on Highway 12. I think something's wrong here. The gas station is deserted. Like, no one's here, but there's a car outside, and the place is wide open. She asked if I thought it was a robbery. How the hell would I know? I snapped, though not out of rudeness, more from nerves. My hand shook as I rubbed at my temple. There's nobody here. I checked. Store, office, bathroom, all empty. Sir, she said, her voice more serious now. Sometimes in a robbery situation, employees will hide. Can you carefully check the perimeter, including outside? I swallowed hard. Yeah. Okay. I stepped back outside, the dispatcher still in my ear. My eyes flicked to the dumpster at the side of the building. I hadn't checked that yet. As I walked over, I tried to keep talking, keep my brain grounded. Look, I don't know what I'm gonna find here, but if there's nobody, I swear. The smell hit me before I lifted the lid. Sweet, metallic wrong. I opened it anyway, and I'll never forget what I saw. 2 bodies, twisted, shoved in like trash bags. One in a gas station uniform, shirt stained dark with blood, the other in jeans and a hoodie, their skin pale under the buzzing security light, their faces contorted. I dropped the lid so fast it slammed, rattling the metal sides. Oh Jesus, oh my God. The words tumbled out. I stumbled back, pacing in a circle, my hands gripping my hair. My throat burned as bile surged up, and I barely made it a few feet toward the highway before I vomited, half choking as the dispatcher shouted, Sir, what's happening?" I gasped into the phone. Bodies. They're in the goddamn dumpster. 2 of them. Oh, Jesus Christ. The dispatcher's voice tightened, more urgent now. "Stay on the line. Officers are on their way. Do not leave the scene." But I couldn't stand still. I walked up and down the side of the highway, dry heaving, hitting my vape over and over just to have something in my lungs that wasn't the memory of that smell. It felt like forever. But maybe 15 minutes later I saw the red and blue glow cutting through the darkness. A cruiser pulled up, and I waved them down, my hands still trembling. 2 officers stepped out, flashlights drawn. One asked me to explain what happened. I told them everything. Every word felt like I was describing someone else's nightmare. After 10 minutes, one officer nodded, almost grimly, and said, "All right, you're free to go. We've got it from here." And that was it. I drove away, my stomach hollow, my mind buzzing with questions I knew I'd never get answers to. Later, when I searched online, I found brief articles. 2 bodies discovered at Larkspur fuel stop. They all mentioned how a member of the public found them. That was me. But none of the articles ever explained who they were, why it happened, or who was responsible. And ever since then, I don't stop at quiet gas stations anymore. If one looks too still, too empty, I'll keep driving until I find another, because I know now that sometimes silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes silence means something is very, very wrong. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a gas station, but life has a way of shoving you into places you never expected. Back then I was 22, broke, and desperate for steady work. I'd been taking classes at a community college outside of Roanoke, Virginia, but the tuition payments and the endless grind of part-time jobs had worn me down. My mom was sick at the time, my stepdad was drinking too much, and the only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't stay at home. That's how I ended up behind the counter at Mill Creek Fuel and Market, a squat little station on the edge of the Blue Ridge. The place sat just off an old 2-lane road that wound between pine woods and empty farmland. If you missed the faded sign out by the ditch, you'd never know it was there. I got the job through a neighbor who knew the owner. His name was Howard Briggs, though everyone just called him Howie. He was in his late 50s, a wiry man with leathery skin and a slow, measured way of talking. Howie lived in a clapboard house next to the station, a place he'd inherited from his father. He treated the gas station like his kingdom. Not in a tyrant way, he was actually one of the kindest bosses I've ever had, but more in the sense that the business was his whole world. When he hired me, he laid out the rules real clear. You keep the register straight, keep the coffee fresh, and keep the lot clean. That's the job, he said, scratching at his jaw. Then his voice got serious. And one more thing. If anyone comes around acting strange, you call me. Doesn't matter what time at Island. You don't try to deal with it yourself. You call me. I laughed a little when he said that. I'd worked in convenience stores before. Drunks, stoners, weirdos, I figured I'd seen it all. But the way Howie's eyes tightened when he said it made me swallow the laugh. "I mean it," he repeated. So I nodded. "Yes, sir." And that was that. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. The drive out from the little apartment I rented took about 20 minutes, winding through dark country roads where the deer stood at the tree line like ghosts. The station itself was nothing much to look at. 2 pumps under a sagging awning, a dim neon sign buzzing with half-dead letters, and a one-room store that smelled faintly of motor oil and burnt coffee. Most nights were dead quiet. Maybe 2 or 3 customers would wander in. A trucker grabbing cigarettes, a local on his way back from a late shift, sometimes a sheriff's deputy topping off his cruiser. The rest of the time I'd sit on a stool behind the counter, reading old paperbacks or watching movies on my iPod. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't mind. The quiet suited me. After the chaos of home, the station felt almost peaceful. I came to know every squeak of the floorboards, every hum of the cooler motors, every flicker of the buzzing fluorescent lights, and for the first 9 months, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Not once. It was late November when things changed. The air outside had that brittle edge, the kind that makes your breath hang white in the dark. The night started like any other. I'd brewed a fresh pot of coffee, wiped down the counter, and was half watching the security monitors from the back office. We had 3 cameras, one pointed at the pumps, one aimed at the front door, and one covering the inside of the store. The resolution was grainy, but it did the job. Around 1:15 a.m., I saw someone walking up the lot on the second camera, the one facing the approach. That in itself wasn't unusual. What caught me was how the man moved. He came from the far side of the lot, not the road, almost like he'd stepped out of the woods. He wore work boots, faded jeans, and a camo ball cap, the kind of guy you see in every rural town. Except he didn't come in. He just stopped at the front door and stood there. At first, I figured maybe he was patting his pockets for his wallet or digging for his keys. But a minute passed, then another. He didn't move. Then, very slowly, he tilted his head upward toward the camera. I felt the hair on my arms prickle. I knew logically he couldn't see me through the feed, but it felt like he was staring straight at me. That's when I remembered Howie's rule. If anyone's acting strange, call him. I hesitated for a second, embarrassed at the idea of waking him up over some loiterer. But then I remembered the way his face had gone tight when he first gave me that rule. So I picked up the phone and dialed his house. He answered on the second ring. His voice was thick with sleep. "Yeah? There's a guy outside," I said. "He's just standing there by the door. Not coming in. Describe him." I gave him the rundown. Boots, jeans, camo cap. There was a pause. Then click. He hung up. I blinked at the receiver. What the hell? When I looked back at the monitor, the man was gone. Before I could process what was happening, another blur of movement appeared on the screen. This time it wasn't the stranger, it was Howie. He came running across the lot in nothing but a white undershirt and boxers, a shotgun gripped tight in his hands. He burst through the front door, eyes wide. "Where is he?" He barked. I just stammered. He was right there. Then he disappeared. Howie rushed past me into the back office. He leaned over the monitors, rewinding the footage, his hands shaking. I'd never seen him like that. The man was usually calm as a stone, but now his face had gone pale. Finally, he froze the feed on a frame where the stranger's face was visible. Just a grainy shot, but enough. Howie's lips tightened, his knuckles whitened on the desk. He didn't say a word. Then he turned to me and said, "Go home." "What?" I said, "Go home. Now." I didn't argue. Something in his voice cut straight through me. I grabbed my jacket and keys and walked out into the freezing night, my heart pounding. The next afternoon, my phone rang. It was Howie. "I'll understand if you don't want to come back," he said flatly. I swallowed. Who was that man? Silence. For a long moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then Howie just repeated, "I'll understand if you don't want to come back." And that was it. He never answered my question. I did go back. For a while. Money has a way of overriding fear, but things weren't the same. Every night I'd find myself staring at the monitors, half expecting to see that man again. Sometimes I thought I caught glimpses at the edge of the lot, a shadow in the tree line. A figure just out of the light, but nothing clear. I noticed Howie started staying up later, sitting out on his porch with the shotgun resting across his lap. The kind of man who never wasted words. He wasted even fewer after that night, and I never pressed him. Because the truth is, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. About a month later, I made my decision for good. It was another dead quiet shift. Not a single customer since midnight. I was sitting behind the counter, sipping coffee gone lukewarm, when the lights flickered. Just once. A quick dimming and buzz. Then I heard it. A soft scrape on the glass door. My eyes snapped to the monitor. There he was. The same man in boots and camo cap. Standing exactly where he had before. Head tilted up. Staring. My stomach dropped. This time, I didn't call Howie. I just grabbed my keys and walked out the back door, locking it behind me. I didn't even look to see if the man followed. I drove straight home, hands trembling on the wheel. The next day I called Howie and told him I was done. I thanked him for the job, told him I couldn't handle nights anymore, and hung up before he could argue. I never went back to Mill Creek Fuel and Market. A year later I heard through the grapevine that the station had shut down. Folks said Howie got sick, moved in with his daughter in North Carolina. No one bought the place. The pumps sit rusting now. The sign collapsed in the ditch. Sometimes when I drive through that part of Virginia, I catch myself glancing down Mill Creek Road, half expecting to see a figure standing in the weeds, waiting. And every time I think about calling Howie, about asking him straight out who that man was, I stop myself. Because deep down, I already know the truth. Whatever scared Howie that night, whatever made him come running with a shotgun in his hands, is something I don't want an answer to. Some things you're better off not knowing. I never thought a part-time job at a lonely gas station in rural Virginia would give me a story I'd still feel in my bones 30 years later. Back then, in the early 92nd, I was 23 and broke, living in a cramped basement apartment just outside a small town called Briar Creek. My mom had recently passed, my dad had long since remarried and moved states away, and I had no real direction. Rent was cheap, but everything else seemed to swallow up what little money I had. So when I saw a flyer posted at the laundromat advertising a night clerk wanted Northridge Gas and Mart apply within, I figured I didn't have much to lose. The station was one of those mom-and-pop places, wedged off an old stretch of highway that truckers, farmers, and the occasional insomniac college kid used to cut through at night. 2 flickering pumps sat out front beneath a metal awning that rattled whenever the wind shifted. Inside, the place smelled of old coffee and motor oil. The paint peeled around the corners, the cooler doors whined when you opened them, and a faded Marlboro sign buzzed in the window. I got the job on the spot. Mr. Garrison, the owner, was a gruff, broad-shouldered man with a permanent coffee mug in hand. He told me the pay wasn't much, the hours were long, and the nights could get weird. But if I kept the place clean, stocked, and didn't get robbed, we'd get along fine. I laughed, thinking he was joking about the robbery part. He wasn't. Working nights at Northridge Gas and Mart wasn't glamorous, but there was a strange peace in it. Most nights I'd be alone, wiping down counters, brewing a fresh pot of coffee for whoever came through, and flipping through old magazines when it got too quiet. The station sat far enough out of town that once darkness fell, you really did feel like you were the only person on Earth. Sometimes I'd step outside just to hear the hum of the crickets and see how the neon glow of the sign painted the gravel lot in red and white. That peace shattered one night in November. It had been bitterly cold all day, the kind of cold that bites at your lungs. Earlier that week, there'd been talk in town about an armed robbery 2 towns over some masked guys with knives who hit a liquor store near the interstate. Mr. Garrison got nervous enough that he doubled up the night shifts for a few days. For the first 2 hours of my shift that night, I had company. A coworker named Clara. She was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, chain-smoked between customers, and never wasted words. "You'll be fine once I leave," she said, stubbing out a cigarette in a paper cup near the register. "But don't go playing hero if anything feels wrong. You call the cops first, got it?" I nodded, though my stomach tightened a little. She gave me a look. "No, really. These places, she gestured around the empty aisles. People think they can get away with things at night. Don't let your guard down. By 10, she clocked out, left me with a wave, and the place went quiet again. About half an hour later, the bell over the door jingled. I looked up to see a girl walk in, late teens, maybe early 20s. She had jet black hair with uneven bangs, dark eyeliner smudged beneath her eyes, and a long black coat that brushed against her boots. I remember thinking she looked like she had walked straight out of some rock club, but instead of confidence, she carried herself with jittery restlessness. Her fingers drummed against the counter as she slid a pack of Camels toward me. "That'll be $2.45, I said. She fished crumpled bills from her pocket, handed them over, and offered me a twitchy half-smile. "Have a good night," I said automatically, but she didn't leave. Instead, she drifted back into the aisles, picking things up and putting them down, pacing slow circles. I tried not to stare, but after a few minutes I finally asked, "You looking for something in particular?" She came back up to the counter, her hands twisting the sleeves of her coat. "Actually, my car ran out of gas. Just up the road. I, don't have a gas can." "Yeah, we sell them," I said, reaching behind the counter for the red plastic cans. I set one down and told her the price. Her face fell. "I don't have that much." I raised an eyebrow. "You just bought cigarettes." She gave a nervous laugh, eyes darting to the side. "Yeah, priorities, right?" I sighed. Against my better judgment, I said, "Look, I'll cover the can for you. You just need gas money, right?" Her whole face lit up. "Thank you, really, thank you. I don't actually have money for gas either, but I can call someone. My uncle. He'll bring me some." "Payphone's right outside," I said, nodding toward the booth by the door. "Got change?" "Got change?" She nodded eagerly. "Yeah, thanks again." Something about her lingered after she walked out. The smile hadn't reached her eyes, and there was an odd stiffness in the way she moved. My gut told me something was off, so instead of going back to cleaning, I glanced up at the surveillance monitor mounted above the counter. The grainy black and white feed showed the parking lot. She didn't go to the payphone. She went straight to a dark van parked near the exit. My breath caught as I watched her lean against the passenger window, talking to someone inside. Every so often, she pointed toward the station. My hands felt clammy against the counter. All I could think of was the robbery Clara had mentioned. After a minute, she turned and started walking back toward the door. She stepped inside, smiling too wide. "Good news, my uncle gave me gas money, but I'm having trouble with the pump. Could you, show me how it works?" I forced a laugh. "They're just regular pumps, pretty simple. Try a different one." "I tried them all," she said quickly. "I just can't figure it out. Please just come out and show me." "I can't leave the station unattended," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Against policy." Her smile faltered. For a second, her face twisted clenched teeth. Eyes narrowed. She stomped once, like a child throwing a tantrum, then plastered on another grin. "Come on, Day, it'll only take a minute. I really need your help." Her breathing grew shallow, fast, almost animalistic. The hairs on my arms stood up. Every instinct screamed at me not to step outside. So I leaned forward, looked her dead in the eyes, and lied. "By the way, I saw you talking to your friends in the van. Already called the cops. Gave them the plate number. They'll be here any second. They're quick in this town." For a moment, her mask cracked completely. Her eyes widened, and she sucked in a sharp breath. Then she bolted out the door. I watched from the monitor as she yanked the van door open. It was already rolling before she shut it. Tires spat gravel as they tore out of the lot and disappeared down the highway. My hands shook as I finally reached for the phone and called the sheriff's office. I told them everything: the girl, the van, the plate, the strange request to lure me outside. They sent a deputy out to take my statement, his face grim as I recounted the night. A day later, I heard they found the van abandoned near a wooded patch 15 miles away. The interior had been shredded with box cutters and hammers. No sign of the girl or her uncle. The deputy didn't tell me what they thought those kids had planned, but his silence said enough. I gave my 2-week notice that same afternoon. Northridge Gas and Mart kept running, but not with me behind the counter. Even now, decades later, I replay that night sometimes. The girl's false smile, the way her breath hitched like a predator's, the sick realization that if I'd stepped outside, I might not have come back in. My mom used to tell me when I was a kid, trust your gut, it knows before you do. I think about that more than ever now. That night, listening to my instincts didn't just save my job, it probably saved my life. I never really planned on ending up in a place like Larkspur. It was the kind of small Virginia town you only ever notice when you're lost. A couple of miles off Route 58, surrounded by endless pine woods and swampy stretches that smelled like wet earth. A place with more abandoned barns than grocery stores. The kind of place people drive past, not into. But life has a way of cornering you. My wife, Dana, had left the year before, and between the divorce, the debt I was left with, and losing my last job at the auto shop, I was broke and tired of crashing on couches. A friend of mine told me about a gas station job in Larkspur overnights, low pay, but steady. Said the guy running the place didn't ask many questions. That was enough for me. The station was called Redwood Fuel and Market, a squat brick building with 2 old pumps out front and a flickering red sign that buzzed louder than the crickets at night. It sat right where the trees thickened into dark forest, the last bit of light before 20 miles of empty road. The first time I pulled in, I remember thinking the place looked like it hadn't been updated since the late 82nd. The owner, Carl, was a heavy-set man with a crooked jaw and a voice like gravel. He hired me after a 5-minute conversation in the back office. "You good with nights?" he asked. "I don't sleep much anyway," I said. "Good. Don't expect a lot of customers after midnight. Just keep the place clean. Stock what needs stocking. Ring up whoever comes in. You'll be by yourself most nights." I started the following week. The first few shifts were almost boring. I'd mop the floor, wipe the counters, stock the cooler with beer and sodas. Sometimes a trucker would stop in, sometimes a couple of teenagers looking to buy energy drinks or cigarettes. Most nights I'd sit behind the counter with the little portable radio Carl left there. The AM channels picking up static more than music. I tried to convince myself I liked the solitude. After the mess my life had become, maybe I did. It was quiet, predictable, safe. Except it didn't feel safe. Not really. It was the little things that got to me. The way the trees pressed in close to the back lot, their black shapes shifting when the wind blew. The way the neon sign outside sometimes cut out completely, leaving me in near total darkness until it sputtered back on. And then there were the nights when customers acted off. One night around 2 in the morning, a man came in wearing a hunting jacket, his face half hidden by a dirty cap. He walked straight to the counter without buying anything, stared at me for a good 10 seconds, then muttered, "You keep the lights on all night, huh?" "That's the job," I said, trying to sound casual. He didn't laugh. He just nodded once, turned, and walked out into the trees instead of the lot. I never saw a truck or car parked outside. The night everything changed was Christmas Eve. Carl had given me a choice. Take the night off, or work it for double pay. I didn't have family coming, didn't have money for gifts anyway, so I figured, why not? The air was sharp with cold that night. I pulled up to the station at 9:50 p.m., the neon sign already stuttering against the black woods. Inside, the place smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. I put my thermos on the counter, hung my coat, and settled in. By 11, the road outside had gone completely silent. Not even a passing pair of headlights. Just me, the hum of the cooler, and the occasional rattle of the ice machine outside. I was scrolling through my phone when I saw movement on the monitor. The security cameras were old, black and white, grainy. Still, there was no mistaking the figure walking toward the pump. Tall, thin, no car in sight. The man wore a long coat that brushed his boots. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. He didn't pump gas. He just stood there by the pump, looking up at the sky. I grabbed the mic by the register and said into it, "Pump's prepaid inside." The figure didn't move. Didn't even flinch. After a minute, I went to the door, cracking it open just enough to shout, "You need help, sir?" Sir." The man slowly turned his head toward me. Even from 30 feet away, under the dim station lights, I could see his eyes. Wide, too wide, reflecting the glow like an animal's knife. My chest tightened. Then, just as slow, he turned back to the sky. It was then that I noticed the glow overhead. At first I thought it was the reflection from the station lights, but it wasn't. It was higher up, moving. A pale, pulsing light above the tree line, steady and silent. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The light swelled, then dimmed, like something breathing in the sky. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. The man at the pump stretched his arms slightly, palms up, almost like he was waiting for something to come down. I stepped back inside and locked the door. My heart was hammering. I grabbed the phone to call Carl, but the line was dead, just static. My cell had no service either. On the monitor, the man at the pump was now looking directly into the camera, straight at me. His mouth moved, though there was no sound. The overhead lights inside the store flickered, then cut out completely. The cooler hummed to silence. The neon sign outside went black. I was alone in the dark. The only light came from the faint glow outside, bleeding through the windows. I couldn't see the man anymore, but I felt him. Felt like he was right outside the glass, watching. And then, I wasn't in the store anymore. I was groggy, heavy, sitting in a chair I didn't remember sitting in. Bright lights pressed against my eyelids, and something cold circled my head. My temples throbbed like they were being squeezed by unseen hands. I tried to lift my arm, it felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "I'm awake," I mumbled, though I wasn't sure who I was speaking to. Somewhere in the blur I sensed a figure. Tall, narrow shoulders, head too large, moving without sound. My stomach dropped. Not again, I thought, though I had no memory of this ever happening before. I closed my eyes, praying it would end quickly. And just like that blackness, I snapped awake at the counter, drenched in sweat. My phone was still in my hand, screen glowing. The television behind me was playing some late-night infomercial. Just as I'd left it, for a second I convinced myself it had all been a dream. Then I felt the pain. 2 points on my forehead, hot and throbbing, like bruises. I touched them and winced. Before I could think, a loud crack split the silence, the sound of the breaker flipping. The power cut again, plunging me into darkness. I jumped, nearly falling off the stool. This time the darkness lasted longer. When the lights sputtered back, everything looked the same. Everything except the monitor. On the screen, every camera showed static, except one. The rear lot. There, just beyond the dumpsters, stood the man in the coat, his head tilted, watching the back door, waiting. I didn't go outside. Not that night. I sat behind the counter with a tire iron from the back room, watching the monitors, waiting for him to move. He didn't dub. He just stood there until, at some point, the static returned and the camera cut out. When Carl showed up at 6 in the morning, I must have looked half mad. He asked if I'd been drinking. I tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. The lights, the man, the blackout. He just shook his head. "Power out here's always cutting in and out. Whole grid's old as hell," he said. "And the guy outside?" Carl frowned. "What guy?" I walked him to the back lot. No footprints in the frost. No sign of anyone. I never worked another Christmas Eve shift, but I kept the job. Bills don't care about nightmares. Still, some nights, when the road outside is empty and the forest leans too close, I swear I see him again, out by the pump, by the tree line. Sometimes in the corner of the monitor, head tilted just so. I don't tell Carl anymore. I don't tell anyone. But I know what I felt that night. The weight on my head, the dread in my stomach. And sometimes, when I rub my forehead, I swear I can still feel the faint ache of 2 bruises that never really healed.